You did it. You said no. You set the boundary. You healed some of the anger. You began to feel a flicker of your own worth, separate from what you do for others. And for a moment, it felt like freedom. But then another feeling began to surface. A quieter, more confusing feeling. A sense of unease when you spoke your truth with clarity. A flash of anxiety when you felt a surge of ambition. A strange desire to retreat, to become small again, right after a moment of brilliance. You have spent so much time doing the shadow work to face your darkness. But have you ever considered that what you truly fear is your light? This is one of the most profound and least discussed secrets of the human journey, the fear of our own power, the terror of our own magnificence. The great psychologist Carl Jung knew that the shadow is not just a basement where we hide our monsters, it is also a treasure chest where we have locked away our gold, the most brilliant, powerful, and radiant parts of ourselves. He called this the golden shadow. Today, we will not be talking about the fear of failure. We will be talking about the much more subtle, much more pervasive fear of success. The fear of what will happen if you finally stop apologizing for your strength and allow yourself to shine.
Why? It feels like a paradox, doesn't it? Why would we fear the very thing we claim to want? Why would the light feel more dangerous than the dark? The answer, like so many others, begins not in logic, but in love, and in our desperate, primal need to preserve it. Let's travel back for a moment, back to the quiet, unwritten rulebook of our childhood home. No one handed you a manual on how to be loved. You learned through observation, through trial, and through the subtle, powerful currents of approval and disapproval. Think of a child, let's call her Chloe, a bright, curious, and passionate little girl. When she is helpful, quiet, and agreeable, she is praised. You're such a good girl. Mommy is so happy when you're sweet like this. In these moments, she feels the warm sun of connection. She feels safe. She feels loved. But what happens when her power begins to show? What happens when she has a strong opinion that contradicts her father's? What happens when her ambition in a school project accidentally outshines her older sibling, causing jealousy? What happens when her passionate explanation of an idea is met with an exhausted parent's sigh and the words, "Can you just be quiet for a minute?" The child's mind is not built for nuance. It cannot think, "My parents are tired," or "My sibling feels insecure." It makes a much simpler, more brutal calculation. A calculation for survival. My power, my brightness, my passion, it creates friction. It causes discomfort. It threatens the peace. And a threat to the peace of the home is a threat to my connection. A threat to my connection is a threat to my life. And so the great exile begins. This is the moment shadow work becomes necessary, even if we won't know it for decades. The child, in an act of brilliant, heartbreaking self-preservation, begins to amputate the parts of herself that feel too dangerous. Her ambition is tucked away, labeled arrogant. Her sharp intellect is softened, labeled intimidating. Her passionate voice is quieted, labeled too much. Her desire to lead is suppressed, labeled bossy. These are not her words. They are the words she absorbed from the environment. She places these golden, radiant parts of her soul into a box, locks it, and casts it into the darkness of her unconscious. This is the birth of the golden shadow. And in its place, she perfects the persona. The mask of the good girl, the easygoing friend, the supportive partner, the humble employee. She becomes a master of dimming her own light. She turns the brilliant bonfire of her spirit into a small, manageable pilot light, enough to stay warm, but never ever enough to risk burning down the house. This isn't a conscious choice. It's an unconscious contract, a sacred vow made by a child to protect her place in the tribe. The vow says, "I will not be too powerful if you promise not to leave me. I will keep myself small so that you can feel comfortable." Now, fast forward 20, 30, 40 years. Chloe is a successful woman. She's a nurse, a mother, a manager. One day, in a hospital board meeting, she sees a flaw in a new policy. A clear, sharp insight comes to her. She feels a surge of energy, a desire to stand up, to speak, to lead the discussion. Her power rises, and then it happens. Her nervous system, which has no sense of linear time, fires off an old alarm bell. The alarm doesn't say, "This is a great idea." The alarm screams danger, threat to connection, risk of abandonment. Suddenly, she feels a flush of anxiety. Her heart beats faster. A voice in her head whispers, "Who do you think you are? Don't make waves. Let someone else say it." So she shrinks back into her chair. She lets the moment pass, the pilot light returns, and she feels a familiar, hollow ache of safety. This is the tyranny of the old programming. It is the ghost of a past survival strategy haunting our present potential. The fear of our own power is not an abstract philosophy. It is a somatic experience, a physical, visceral reaction to an old, outdated definition of safety. The great work, the Carl Jung-inspired journey we are on, is not to kill this fear. You cannot kill a part of yourself that fought so hard to keep you alive. The work is to turn towards that frightened inner child, that loyal gatekeeper, to extend a hand, and to gently, lovingly let her know that the war is over, the rules have changed, and it is finally safe to come home.
So the vow was made. The contract was signed in the invisible ink of childhood tears. And the most brilliant parts of you were locked away for safekeeping. This is where the genius of Carl Jung illuminates our path forward. It's a path that leads directly into the territory we were taught to fear. It is the heart of shadow work. Most people, when they hear the term shadow work, imagine a grim journey into a dungeon. They think of facing their inner demons, their anger, their jealousy, their greed, their shame. And that work is profoundly important. It is the work of cleaning out the basement of the psyche. But it is only half of the journey. What Carl Jung understood so deeply is that the shadow is not just a repository for our bad qualities. It is the container for everything in us that is unconscious. Everything that has been repressed, denied, or undeveloped. And that includes our light, our highest potential, our undeveloped genius, our magnificence. This is the golden shadow. It is the treasure chest you buried long ago because its contents felt too heavy, too bright, too valuable to carry in the world you knew. It holds every positive, powerful quality that you decided you were not allowed to have. Think about it. Your fierce, unapologetic ambition. Your sharp, penetrating intellect that sees through deception. your raw, untamed creativity that longs to build new worlds. Your innate authority and your capacity for leadership. Your deep, unwavering spiritual connection. These are the golden parts of you. And if you want to know what your specific gold is, Carl Jung gave us a map. A strange and often uncomfortable map. That map is your envy and your admiration. Think for a moment about the people who trigger you. Not just with annoyance, but with a complex cocktail of admiration and a strange, quiet resentment. The woman at work who speaks with such unwavering confidence. The friend who leaves her stable job to pursue her art. The public figure who shares their bold, controversial opinions without apology. Our first instinct is to think, "She's so arrogant," or "I could never be that reckless." This is the ego's defense mechanism. It is a projection. Carl Jung taught that when we have a strong emotional reaction to a quality in someone else, positive or negative, it is because that quality exists undeveloped within our own shadow. You are not reacting to them. You are reacting to a disowned part of yourself. Your envy is a homesick longing. It is your exiled gold seeing itself in another and crying out to be reclaimed. You recognize that confidence in her because that same confidence is a buried seed in you. You recognize that freedom in him because that same freedom is a locked room in your own soul. This is a revolutionary reframing. Your envy is not a flaw to be ashamed of. It is a compass, a sacred signpost pointing directly to your life's unlived potential. It is your own soul whispering from across the room, "Look, that's us. That's what we are meant to be." But here lies the great paradox. The moment we recognize this, the moment we see the glint of our own gold in another, fear rushes in. The old gatekeeper awakens, because claiming our gold comes with a terrifying price: responsibility. If I admit that I have a powerful voice, I can no longer remain silent in the face of injustice. If I admit that I have a gift for leadership, I can no longer complain from the sidelines. If I admit that I am a creator, I can no longer use the excuse of being too busy to create. To claim our gold is to accept the call to adventure. It means we must leave the familiar, comfortable village of our limitations and step into the vast, unpredictable wilderness of our own potential. It is often so much easier to stay in the known world of, "I'm not good enough." It is a painful identity, but it is a familiar one. It asks nothing of us. And so we self-sabotage. This is the quiet, tragic work of the golden shadow sphere. We procrastinate on the very projects that set our souls on fire. We stay in relationships and jobs that are beneath our brilliance because they feel safe. We find a million ways to prove the old story right, that we are, in fact, small. This is not a failure of will. It is not a lack of discipline. It is a loyalty to that old, outdated contract. A loyalty to the child who decided that their power was the price of love. The shadow work, then, is not to force ourselves to be more powerful. It is an act of deep diplomacy. It is the work of turning inward to that part of you that is so afraid to shine and beginning a new conversation. A conversation that starts with two simple, powerful words. I understand. I understand why you are scared. I understand why you learned to hide. You did it to protect us, and you did a perfect job. This is how the healing begins, not with a battle, but with a peace treaty. A treaty between the you that you are and the magnificent you that you have always been. Waiting patiently in the dark for the sound of your own forgiving voice.
And so, the treaty is offered. A hand of peace is extended to the frightened child within. A conversation has begun. But knowing the source of a fear is different from dissolving it. Understanding the lock is not the same as having the key. How do we move from this sacred understanding to a lived, embodied reality? How do we begin to reclaim the gold we have buried so deep? The answer is not a revolution. You cannot simply decide to be powerful tomorrow. That leap is too vast. The old programming is too strong. It would be like asking someone who hasn't walked in 20 years to run a marathon. The system would panic. It would shut down. No, the healing of the golden shadow is a gentle process. It is an act of physiotherapy for the soul. We must strengthen the atrophied muscles of our magnificence, one small, deliberate repetition at a time. I want to offer you a tangible, practical piece of shadow work you can begin today. A way to start collecting new, irrefutable evidence for your nervous system. I call this practice claiming one ray of light. For the next week, your only task is to identify just one positive quality in yourself that you consistently downplay, hide, or apologize for. Just one. It could be your intelligence, your sharp sense of humor, your creativity, your talent for organizing, your deep empathy, your courage. Let's take a moment here. I want to tell you about Sarah, a 45-year-old woman I once knew, a brilliant graphic designer. Her golden shadow contained a powerful, natural leader, but she had learned in her childhood that to lead was to be bossy and unlikable. So for years, she would have brilliant ideas for her team, but she would email them quietly to her boss, letting him present them as his own. She kept her light safely hidden. Her first ray of light practice was this. She chose the quality of leadership. And in the next team meeting, instead of emailing her idea, she took a deep breath and said, I have a thought about how we can approach this. Would it be helpful if I took 10 minutes to sketch it out on the whiteboard for everyone? Notice the genius of this. She didn't storm in and say, listen to me, I have the answer. She offered her leadership as an act of service, a gentle, low-stakes experiment. Your practice is the same. Once you have identified your quality, find one very small, very safe opportunity this week to consciously express it, without apology, without downplaying it. If your hidden quality is your creativity, perhaps you don't need to launch a public exhibition. Perhaps you just share one of your poems with a single trusted friend and simply say, I wrote this, instead of, it's just a silly thing I was playing with. If your hidden quality is your intelligence, perhaps you don't need to win a debate. Perhaps you just allow yourself to explain a complex topic you love to your partner, without ending it with the phrase, if that makes any sense. If your quality is your kindness, perhaps you allow yourself to do a kind act, and when thanked, you simply say, you're welcome, instead of, oh, it was nothing. Because it wasn't nothing. It was your light in action. This is not an exercise in arrogance. This is an exercise in authenticity. You are running a series of small scientific experiments. The hypothesis for each one is, if I allow this small part of my authentic self to be seen, I will not be abandoned, the world will not crumble, I will be safe. Each time you run this experiment, and the outcome is safety, or even acceptance or appreciation, you are laying down a new neural pathway in your brain. You are gathering new data. You are literally rewiring your nervous system, teaching it a new definition of connection. A definition that says, my light is not a threat to connection, it is the very source of it. But a voice may ask, what if it doesn't go well? What if I share my idea and it's dismissed? What if I let my light shine and someone is bothered by it? This is a crucial moment, because this is where the shadow work deepens. If someone reacts negatively to your light, Carl Jung would invite you to consider this. Their reaction is almost never about you. It is about them. Your light is not burning them. It is simply illuminating their own fear of their own light. Your courage is reminding them of the courage they have not yet claimed. Your job in that moment is not to dim your light again to make them comfortable. Your job is to hold steady, to anchor yourself in the truth that your expression was authentic, and to allow them to have their own experience without making it your responsibility to fix. This is a profound act of emotional adulthood. This practice of claiming one ray of light is how you begin the great work of individuation. It is how you move from being a character scripted by your past to becoming the author of your own life. You are not erasing the old story of the frightened child. You are adding a new chapter, a chapter about the wise, radiant, and courageous person you are becoming. One small, golden ray of light at a time.
And so, the quiet reclamation begins, not with a thunderous roar, but with the gentle, persistent courage of a single ray of light. We began this journey feeling the confusing, paradoxical fear of our own power. We traveled back to its source, understanding that this fear was not a weakness, but a brilliant survival strategy learned in the delicate ecosystem of our childhood. The strategy that taught us a simple, powerful lie. To be small is to be safe. We then uncovered Carl Jung's profound concept of the golden shadow, realizing that our envy and admiration are not signs of lack, but a sacred map pointing to the buried treasure of our own unlived potential. We learned that the parts of us we admire most in others are simply echoes of our own exiled magnificence. And finally, we were given a gentle, tangible practice, claiming one ray of light, to begin the sacred work of rewriting that old survival contract. This is the heart of shadow work, consciously, deliberately, and compassionately collecting new evidence that it is, in fact, safe to shine. This journey is not about becoming arrogant or overbearing. It is about arriving at a place of grounded, authentic self-expression. It is about finally giving yourself the permission you have been waiting for someone else to grant, the permission to take up the space you were born to occupy. As you continue this practice, as you start to truly own your light, you will discover the most beautiful paradox of all. Your power is not a weapon that pushes others away. It is a lighthouse. And a single lighthouse, shining brightly, gives every other ship in the harbor the courage to navigate the dark. Your light does not diminish others. It gives them permission to find their own. But this new way of being, this more authentic, more powerful self, will inevitably begin to feel different in your old world. As you change, the system around you must also shift. The old roles you played in your family, your friendships, your workplace may no longer fit. You may start to feel a strange, unsettling sense of disconnection from the life you once knew. This is not a sign that you have done something wrong. It is a sign that you are outgrowing your old container. And understanding this feeling of disconnection is the next crucial step on our path to becoming whole. It is exactly what we will be exploring in our next journey together. I invite you to subscribe so that we may continue to walk this courageous path. For now, your work is to become a collector of your own gold, a gentle miner of your own magnificence. And to begin that process, I invite you to make a public declaration in this safe space. In the comment section below, I want you to claim one part of your golden shadow. Share one strength, one talent, or one ambition that you are, from this day forward, choosing to stop hiding. You could write, "I am claiming my creativity," or "I am claiming my powerful voice," or simply, "I am ready to claim my light." Let this comment section become a galaxy of reclaimed stars, a testament to the power we are no longer afraid to own. Because the world does not need another dimmed light. It desperately needs the unique, brilliant, and whole version of you. And your time to be small is over.